bread, rice, potatoes. These foods are often placed at the top of the avoid list for people who want to keep their blood sugar stable. Many are told that once these foods appear on the plate, problems are guaranteed. But here is the reality I want to share with you calmly and honestly. These foods are deeply rooted in almost every culture. They are part of family meals, traditions, and daily routines. And for most people, completely removing them long-term simply is not realistic. What matters far more than complete restriction is understanding. When you understand how your body responds to carbohydrates and how small adjustments can change that response, you regain control instead of feeling deprived. I want to show you how carbohydrates can fit into your meals in a more balanced and thoughtful way. This is not about perfection, it is about awareness and practical habits that many people can actually maintain. I recommend listening closely to how your body reacts after meals. Blood sugar responses are not random. They follow patterns. And when those patterns are repeated day after day, they influence how the body handles energy over time. Large, rapid rises followed by sharp drops place stress on the system. Gentler rises followed by steady declines are much easier for the body to manage. Let us begin with one of the most useful yet least discussed tools for this. It is something called resistant starch. Most starches found in foods like bread, pasta, rice, and potatoes are quickly broken down into glucose during digestion. This is what causes blood sugar to rise shortly after eating. When this happens repeatedly day after day, the body becomes less responsive to insulin. Over time, this makes it harder for glucose to move efficiently from the bloodstream into the cells where it is needed. Resistant starch behaves differently. As the name suggests, it resists digestion in the small intestine. Instead of being rapidly converted into glucose, it travels further down the digestive tract. There, it becomes fuel for beneficial gut bacteria. When these bacteria ferment resistant starch, they produce substances that support metabolic balance. One of these substances helps the body respond more effectively to insulin. Others support the lining of the digestive system and help calm low-grade inflammation. This process happens quietly, without dramatic sensations, but over time it can make a meaningful difference. So how do you increase resistant starch in everyday foods? One simple method is cooling cooked starches and then reheating them later. Foods like rice, potatoes, and pasta change structure when they are cooled. Part of the starch reorganizes into a form that resists digestion. This change remains even after reheating. For example, rice that is cooked, cooled, and eaten the next day behaves differently inside the body compared to freshly cooked rice. The same is true for potatoes. Studies have shown that cooling these foods for about a day significantly increases their resistant starch content. From a practical perspective, this means leftovers can actually work in your favor. Preparing starchy foods ahead of time, storing them in the refrigerator, and reheating them later may help reduce the size of blood sugar rises after eating. I recommend thinking of this not as a strict rule, but as an option. If you are cooking at home, you can plan meals in a way that allows starches to cool before being eaten. The taste may be slightly different, but for most people it remains enjoyable, and the potential benefit is meaningful. In addition to cooled starches, there are foods that naturally contain higher amounts of resistant starch. Beans, lentils, and peas are good examples. Certain whole grains, such as oats and barley, also contribute. Including these foods regularly can support steadier energy levels throughout the day. The next principle I want to share is food pairing. Carbohydrates are rarely eaten alone. What you eat alongside them matters just as much as the carbohydrate itself. Adding protein to a meal slows digestion and helps the body process glucose more smoothly. Healthy fats also play a role by slowing stomach emptying and influencing how glucose enters the bloodstream. This is why eating rice together with beans often produces a gentler response than eating rice alone. Potatoes paired with olive oil or butter tend to be easier on blood sugar than plain potatoes by themselves. These combinations are not accidental. Traditional meals across cultures often evolved in ways that support balance. Another helpful addition is acidity. Ingredients such as vinegar, lemon, or lime slow the breakdown of starch during digestion. Fermented foods can have a similar effect. These small additions change the pace at which glucose enters the bloodstream. Food order also plays an important role. When carbohydrates are eaten first, they are absorbed quickly. When protein and vegetables are eaten first, the body releases glucose more gradually. The food itself does not change, but the order changes how it is processed. This can be especially useful when eating outside the home. Restaurants often serve bread or chips before the main meal. I recommend waiting. Eat the protein and vegetables first, then enjoy the carbohydrates afterward. This simple shift can make a noticeable difference. Another strategy that supports balance is gentle movement after meals. Even a short walk can help the body use glucose more effectively. It does not need to be intense. Light activity such as walking, tidying the kitchen, or climbing stairs helps muscles take in glucose without requiring large amounts of insulin. One muscle in particular plays a key role here. The muscle in the lower leg is especially good at absorbing glucose during movement. Because it is designed for endurance, it can continue working for extended periods without fatigue. This makes post-meal walking one of the most accessible and effective habits. Next, let us talk about carbohydrate quality. Not all carbohydrates behave the same way. Highly processed carbohydrates made from fine flour are absorbed quickly. Whole and minimally processed carbohydrates are absorbed more slowly. This difference matters. Think of it like a fire. Finely processed carbohydrates are like dry kindling. They burn quickly and intensely. Whole grains and fiber-rich foods are more like logs. They burn slowly and steadily. Fiber deserves special attention. It slows digestion, supports gut health, and contributes to more stable energy levels. Even for those who choose to reduce carbohydrates, fiber remains important. Finally, timing matters. The body processes glucose less efficiently later in the day. Eating large meals close to bedtime often leads to higher and longer-lasting blood sugar levels. I recommend allowing several hours between the last meal and sleep whenever possible. These are not extreme rules, they are gentle adjustments. When practiced consistently, they support steadier energy, improved comfort after meals, and a calmer relationship with food. Before moving forward, I want to slow things down for a moment and reinforce an important mindset. This is not about chasing perfect numbers or eliminating entire food groups. It is about building habits that support steadiness. The body responds best to consistency and predictability. Small daily choices add up far more than short bursts of strict control. Let us return briefly to resistant starch and look at how it fits into real-life routines. Many people prepare meals the same way they always have. Freshly cooked rice, hot potatoes straight from the stove, warm bread served immediately. There is nothing wrong with these foods themselves. What matters is frequency and context. When these foods are eaten repeatedly, in their fastest digesting form, the body is forced to respond quickly again and again. By simply changing preparation timing, you change how the body experiences the same food. Cooking starches in advance and allowing them to cool is not complicated. It can be as simple as making extra rice for dinner and saving some for the next day. The same applies to potatoes or pasta. This approach fits easily into many households without adding stress. Another helpful habit is portion awareness. Resistant starch helps slow digestion, but portion size still matters. I recommend serving starches as part of a balanced plate rather than the main focus. When vegetables and protein occupy most of the plate, carbohydrates naturally take a supporting role. Now let us go deeper into food pairing and why it matters so much. Protein has a stabilizing effect because it slows how quickly food leaves the stomach. This gives the body more time to manage incoming glucose. Healthy fats contribute in a similar way. They also help improve satisfaction after meals, which reduces the urge to snack shortly afterward. This is why traditional meals often include combinations like rice and beans, lentils with grains, or bread served alongside cheese or olive oil. These combinations were not created by accident. They developed over generations of observation and experience. Acidic foods deserve another moment of attention. A small amount of vinegar or lemon juice added to a meal can change digestion speed. This does not require large quantities. Even modest amounts can influence how starch is broken down. Fermented foods also support digestion and balance. Foods such as yogurt, sauerkraut, or fermented vegetables introduce beneficial bacteria and acids that support steadier glucose responses over time. Food order is one of the easiest habits to adopt because it does not require changing what you eat. It only changes how you eat it. Starting a meal with vegetables and protein prepares the digestive system for carbohydrates that follow. This simple shift often leads to feeling more comfortable after meals. I recommend practicing this at home first. When eating out, simply pause before reaching for bread or chips. Enjoy the main meal first, then decide if you still want the extra starch. Many people notice they naturally eat less without feeling restricted. Now let us talk more about movement and why timing matters. Movement after meals helps muscles absorb glucose directly from the bloodstream. This reduces the demand placed on insulin. The key is not intensity, but timing. Light movement soon after eating is far more effective than intense exercise hours later. Walking is especially useful because it is accessible. A calm 10-minute walk after meals can support balance throughout the day. This habit also supports digestion and circulation. The muscles in the lower legs play an important role because they are designed for endurance. They can continue working gently for long periods. This allows them to absorb glucose steadily without fatigue. If walking is not possible, other light activities can help. Standing, gentle stretching, or household tasks all contribute. The goal is simply to avoid sitting completely still immediately after eating. Next, let us look more closely at carbohydrate quality. Processing changes how carbohydrates behave in the body. Finely milled flours are absorbed quickly because they require little digestion. Whole and intact grains take longer to break down. Choosing carbohydrates closer to their natural form supports steadier energy. Examples include steel-cut oats instead of instant oats, intact grains instead of refined flours, and whole vegetables instead of processed snacks. Fiber plays a central role here. It slows digestion and feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Fiber also contributes to feeling full and satisfied after meals. Even when reducing carbohydrates, fiber should remain a priority. Many people notice improved comfort and steadier energy when fiber intake increases gradually. Finally, let us return to meal timing. The body follows daily rhythms. Earlier in the day, it handles glucose more efficiently. Later in the evening, this ability naturally decreases. Eating large meals close to bedtime often leads to higher blood sugar levels that linger longer. I recommend finishing the last meal of the day several hours before sleep whenever possible. This gives the body time to process food before rest. These strategies work best when combined. No single habit works alone. Together they form a system that supports balance without extremes. In the next part, I will help you bring all of these ideas together into a simple daily framework that feels realistic and sustainable over time. Think of it like a fire. Finely processed carbohydrates are like dry kindling. They burn quickly and intensely. Whole grains and fiber-rich foods are more like logs. They burn slowly and steadily. Fiber deserves special attention. It slows digestion, supports gut health, and contributes to more stable energy levels. Even for those who choose to reduce carbohydrates, fiber remains important. Finally, timing matters. The body processes glucose less efficiently later in the day. Eating large meals close to bedtime often leads to higher and longer-lasting blood sugar levels. I recommend allowing several hours between the last meal and sleep whenever possible. These are not extreme rules, they are gentle adjustments. When practiced consistently, they support steadier energy, improved comfort after meals, and a calmer relationship with food. Now let us bring everything together and look at how these ideas can fit into an ordinary day. This is where many people struggle, not because the concepts are difficult, but because daily life feels busy and unpredictable. The goal here is not to follow rules perfectly, but to create a rhythm that gently supports your body. Start with how you think about meals. Instead of viewing carbohydrates as the main event, I recommend seeing them as one part of a larger picture. A balanced plate usually begins with vegetables, includes a solid source of protein, and then adds carbohydrates in a thoughtful amount. For example, imagine a simple lunch. Instead of starting with bread or rice, begin with vegetables. This could be a salad, cooked greens, or even a bowl of soup rich in vegetables. Then add protein, such as beans, eggs, fish, or meat depending on your preferences. Carbohydrates come last, not as a restriction but as a sequence. This order prepares the digestive system and helps slow the release of glucose into the bloodstream. Many people notice they feel calmer after meals when they follow this pattern. Less heaviness, less sudden fatigue. Preparation plays an important role as well. Cooking ahead of time reduces decision-making during the day. Preparing rice, potatoes, or pasta in advance and storing them in the refrigerator makes it easier to benefit from resistant starch without extra effort. Leftovers become a tool rather than a compromise. I recommend thinking of the refrigerator as part of your strategy. Foods that have cooled overnight often behave differently in the body than freshly cooked foods. This simple habit supports steadier energy without changing what you eat. Let us talk about breakfast for a moment. Many traditional breakfasts rely heavily on refined carbohydrates: toast, pastries, sweet cereals. These foods are quickly absorbed and often lead to a rapid rise, followed by a drop in energy. Instead, I suggest building breakfast around protein and fiber first. This does not mean eliminating carbohydrates. It means choosing forms that digest more slowly. Whole oats, beans, or vegetables paired with protein create a steadier start to the day. Adding healthy fats can further improve satisfaction and balance. Now let us look at lunch and dinner. Lunch is often eaten during busy hours. This is where food pairing becomes especially important. Combining carbohydrates with protein and fats helps avoid energy dips in the afternoon. Even simple additions such as olive oil on vegetables or beans added to grains can make a difference. Dinner timing deserves careful attention. Eating earlier allows the body more time to process glucose before rest. When dinner is finished several hours before bedtime, many people notice improved comfort during the evening. If dinner includes carbohydrates, pairing them thoughtfully and keeping portions moderate supports balance. Ending the meal with a short walk can further help the body use glucose efficiently. Now let us talk about movement in more practical terms. Movement does not need to be formal exercise. The goal is simply to avoid long periods of complete stillness after meals. A gentle walk, standing while talking on the phone, or light household tasks all count. I recommend choosing one habit that feels easy. Perhaps a 10-minute walk after the largest meal of the day. Once that becomes routine, additional movement often happens naturally. Quality of carbohydrates deserves another look here. Highly processed foods digest quickly because they lack structure. Whole foods retain their natural structure and fiber, slowing digestion. This difference matters more than many people realize. Choosing intact grains, whole vegetables and legumes supports steadier energy. These foods also support gut health, which plays an important role in metabolic balance over time. Fiber deserves special emphasis again. It is not about large amounts all at once. Gradual increases allow the digestive system to adapt comfortably. Drinking enough water also supports fiber's benefits. Now let us discuss timing more deeply. Eating late at night challenges the body's natural rhythms. Hormonal signals that help regulate glucose follow daily cycles. Later in the evening, the body is simply less prepared to process food efficiently. Finishing dinner earlier gives the system time to settle before sleep. This does not require perfection. Even small shifts earlier can help. One final point before we move on is mindset. Many people approach food with fear or frustration. I recommend replacing this with curiosity. Pay attention to how different meals make you feel. Energy levels, comfort, hunger patterns. These signals provide valuable feedback. In the final part, I will summarize these ideas into a simple, long-term approach and share how consistency, rather than strict control, creates the most sustainable results. Think of it like a fire. Finely processed carbohydrates are like dry kindling. They burn quickly and intensely. Whole grains and fiber-rich foods are more like logs. They burn slowly and steadily. Fiber deserves special attention. It slows digestion, supports gut health, and contributes to more stable energy levels. Even for those who choose to reduce carbohydrates, fiber remains important. Finally, timing matters. The body processes glucose less efficiently later in the day. Eating large meals close to bedtime often leads to higher and longer-lasting blood sugar levels. I recommend allowing several hours between the last meal and sleep whenever possible. These are not extreme rules, they are gentle adjustments. When practiced consistently, they support steadier energy, improved comfort after meals, and a calmer relationship with food. Now let us slow down and bring this journey to a calm and practical close. Everything we have discussed works best when it becomes part of daily life, rather than a short-term effort. The body responds to patterns. What you do most days matters far more than what you do occasionally. I recommend thinking in terms of gentle structure instead of strict rules. Start by choosing one or two habits that feel realistic. For some people, that might be changing the order of foods at meals. For others, it could be preparing starches ahead of time and eating them after they have cooled. Some may begin with a short walk after dinner. You do not need to do everything at once. Consistency builds confidence. When you repeat the same supportive habits day after day, the body learns what to expect. Blood sugar responses become smoother. Energy levels feel more stable. Meals become more enjoyable rather than stressful. It is also important to remember that no single meal defines progress. If one meal does not go as planned, it does not undo everything else. Simply return to your usual rhythm at the next meal. This calm approach prevents frustration and supports long-term success. Let us briefly revisit the key ideas in a simple way. Carbohydrates do not need to be removed completely. How they are prepared, paired, and timed makes a meaningful difference. Cooling starches and reheating them later can support steadier responses. Pairing carbohydrates with protein, fats, and fiber slows digestion. Eating vegetables and protein first changes how glucose enters the bloodstream. Gentle movement after meals helps muscles use glucose efficiently. Choosing less processed carbohydrates supports balance. Eating earlier in the evening aligns better with the body's natural rhythms. Each of these ideas works quietly in the background. There is no dramatic feeling when they begin to help. Over time, many people notice fewer energy swings, better comfort after meals, and a calmer relationship with food. I also recommend listening closely to your own experience. Everyone responds slightly differently. Paying attention to how you feel after meals provides useful guidance. Comfort, energy, and satisfaction are valuable signals. Food should remain a source of nourishment and enjoyment. When meals feel supportive rather than restrictive, it becomes much easier to stay consistent. That consistency is what creates meaningful change over time. If there is one message I want you to take away, it is this: small, thoughtful choices practiced regularly are more powerful than extreme changes practiced briefly. You do not need perfection. You need patience and awareness. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope these ideas help you feel more confident and comfortable with your meals. Take care of yourself, stay curious, and continue building habits that support your well-being one step at a time. Think of it like a fire. Finely processed carbohydrates are like dry kindling. They burn quickly and intensely. Whole grains and fiber-rich foods are more like logs. They burn slowly and steadily. Fiber deserves special attention. It slows digestion, supports gut health, and contributes to more stable energy levels. Even for those who choose to reduce carbohydrates, fiber remains important. Finally, timing matters. The body processes glucose less efficiently later in the day. Eating large meals close to bedtime often leads to higher and longer-lasting blood sugar levels. I recommend allowing several hours between the last meal and sleep whenever possible. These are not extreme rules, they are gentle adjustments. When practiced consistently, they support steadier energy, improved comfort after meals, and a calmer relationship with food.